They laughed when they saw her, a child, barely tall enough to carry the rifle on her back. Then the ambush closed in. Bullets tore through concrete. A SEAL screamed and went silent, and one by one, 15 terrorists fell, not because of technology, not because of luck, but because a 12-year-old girl never missed. Before we begin the full story, pause for just a moment. Tell me, where are you watching from today? Drop your city or country in the comments. And if stories of silent courage, unseen sacrifice, and unexpected heroes matter to you, please subscribe. Now, let's begin. The bullet struck flesh before anyone finished laughing. A Navy SEAL collapsed hard against the alley wall, his rifle clattering as his body slid down into the dust. His blood spread dark and fast, soaking into the cracked stone, as if the ground itself were drinking it. No warning, no time to react. The platoon scattered instantly, training overriding shock. Boots scraped concrete, weapons came up, breathing sharpened. Eyes snapped toward windows, rooftops, doorways, anywhere death might be hiding. Then someone said it. Not loud, not cruel, just stunned. She's 12. The words cut through the chaos sharper than gunfire. On the rooftop above them, framed against a pale, merciless sky, stood a girl with a sniper rifle braced against her shoulder. She was small, too small. Her uniform hung loose on her narrow frame, sleeves rolled, gloves cinched tight around thin wrists. A child. A few of the men laughed. Not because it was funny. Because disbelief sometimes sounds like humor when fear doesn't know where to go. This has to be a mistake, one muttered, pressing his back against cover as another round cracked overhead. Command wouldn't send a kid into this. Another SEAL shook his head, breathed tight. They've lost their damn minds. None of them noticed her finger settled gently against the trigger. The rifle was already steady. Her name was Isla Rahman. From below, they saw only what the eye wanted to see: youth, fragility, an impossible presence in a place designed to kill grown men. What they didn't see were the faint scars along her cheekbone, where hot shell casings once kissed skin. They didn't see the slight asymmetry in her posture, a compensation learned after firing thousands of rounds from prone positions on broken ground. They didn't see the way her breathing slowed, not from fear, but from habit. Through the scope, the world became quiet, not peaceful, precise. Angles replaced chaos, distance replaced emotion. Isla adjusted her cheek weld, the cool metal familiar against her skin. Below her, the SEAL platoon was pinned down, bodies pressed into shadow, courage stretched thin under sustained fire. She felt no thrill, no pride, only responsibility. The first target leaned out too far, confidence written in the lazy angle of his rifle. Isla exhaled. He fell backward, disappearing from the window like a dropped marionette. Below, one of the SEALs froze. Another shot followed, then another. The laughter died. Confusion rippled through the platoon. They had trained their entire lives for moments like this. Years of selection, years of loss, years of carrying weight no one back home could imagine. And yet, someone above them was saving their lives. Someone they had dismissed without a second thought. A child. The injustice wasn't loud. It was quiet. It sat heavy in the chest. Every instinct in them screamed that she shouldn't be there. That someone had failed her long before she ever touched a weapon. And yet, every breath they were still drawing existed because she was. Another SEAL was hit. This one grazed, blood streaking down his arm. He bit down, silent, eyes lifting to the rooftop. He saw her now. Really saw her. Not bravado, not fear. Focus. She shifted positions smoothly, knees scraping concrete, ignoring the pain the way she had learned to ignore hunger, cold, and grief. The rifle moved as if guided by thought alone. The enemy began to panic. They hadn't planned for her. Foreshadowing the deeper truth. Isla's eyes flicked briefly to the side of her scope, checking a small worn patch stitched inside her jacket. It was faded now, edges frayed. A reminder. Not of rank, not of orders. Of someone who once told her, "Only take the shot that matters." She waited. Below, a terrorist barked commands, shoving civilians forward, confident the SEALs wouldn't fire. Isla adjusted her angle by a fraction. The shot passed through a gap no one else would have seen. The man dropped. The civilians lived. Silence followed, thick, stunned, reverent. The platoon didn't cheer. They couldn't. Something far heavier than victory had begun to settle. Isla Rahman did not remember a time when the world felt safe. Her earliest memory was not a toy or a song, but heat, thick, suffocating heat trapped beneath a sky the color of rust. She remembered standing in a crowded market, Her fingers curled tightly around her father's hand, the smell of spice and sweat and diesel clinging to the air. Voices overlapped. Vendors shouted. Somewhere, metal clanged against metal. Then the ground jumped. The explosion did not arrive as sound at first. It arrived as force, an invisible hand that lifted her small body and threw her backward. The world fractured into dust and screaming. Glass rained down like knives. Smoke swallowed color. Her ears rang so violently she thought she had gone deaf. When the noise finally returned, it came distorted, as if heard underwater. She was on the ground. Her palms burned. Her lungs fought for air. Her father's hand was gone. Isla searched for him, panic clawing at her chest, her legs shaking as she stumbled through bodies and debris. She found his shoe first. Then the curve of his shoulder beneath fallen wood. His eyes were open, staring at nothing. He did not move. That was the moment childhood ended, not with tears, but with understanding. Dr. Imran Rahman had been a man of numbers. Before war hollowed their country, he designed systems that measured force, pressure, precision. He believed chaos could be understood, even controlled. After Isla's mother died, he poured that belief into his daughter, not as training, but as survival. Observe first, he used to tell her. Voice calm even when sirens wailed nearby. Emotion lies. Numbers don't. They move constantly after the bombing. Border to border. City to city. Isla learned to read rooms the way other children learned to read books. She noticed shadows, exits, the way people held their shoulders when they were lying. When armed men came asking for her father's skills, he refused. When they came again, they didn't ask. Isla watched from a hidden corner as they dragged him away. She memorized their boots, their voices, the rhythm of their steps. She never screamed. She never forgot. After her father's death, Isla spoke less. Not because she had nothing to say, but because words felt dangerous. They revealed too much. They invited questions she couldn't answer without breaking. Silence, she discovered, was safer. It let her listen. An intelligence patrol found her 2 years later, alone in an abandoned building, drawing lines in the dust with a broken pencil. At first glance, she looked feral, thin, wary, eyes too old for her face. Then one of them noticed the drawings. Angles, distances, elevations. She wasn't playing. She was mapping sniper positions that had already killed 3 soldiers. They tested her gently at first, expecting coincidence. There was none. Every calculation was precise, every estimate accurate. When they gave her a rifle expecting fear, her hand steadied it like something familiar. Not excitement, recognition. No one celebrated her talent. No one called it a gift. They treated it like what it was, a consequence. Isla was never told she was special. She was told she was needed. And so she learned. She learned to control her breathing until her heartbeat slowed on command. She learned to separate herself from the moment of impact, not emotionally, but functionally. She learned that hesitation killed faster than bullets. Most importantly, she learned restraint, because the dead never came back, and she carried every face with her. Back on the rooftop, Isla shifted again, her muscles aching now, sweat cooling against her spine. The sun climbed higher, pressing heat into concrete and bone. Below her, the SEAL platoon was still alive. That fact pulsed quietly inside her, not as pride but relief. She heard one of them shout coordinates. Another curse. Another man grunt in pain. They still didn't trust her. She understood that too. To them, she was an error in the system. A moral failure dressed in camouflage. Proof that something had gone terribly wrong long before today. They were not wrong. Isla didn't want their approval. She wanted the ambush to end. She watched as the enemy regrouped, smarter now, angrier. They moved with caution, aware that death was hunting them from above. She waited. Her father's voice surfaced again, soft and steady. Only take the shot that matters. She adjusted her scope. Isla knew something the men below were only beginning to understand. Surviving was not the same as winning. Every shot she fired saved lives, but it also added weight. Invisible, cumulative, permanent. She felt it settle behind her ribs, heavy and familiar. She would carry it long after this mission ended. Long after these men went home. They would remember her as the child who saved them. She would remember them as the reason she fired. Silence held the space between those truths. The enemy adapted quickly. They always did. What had started as confidence shifted into calculation. Movement slowed. Hits no longer lingered in windows. Rifles appeared only for seconds at a time before vanishing back into shadow. Below, the SEAL platoon tightened formation, adjusting angles, conserving ammunition. Their movements were precise, professional, but something else had entered the space between them. Doubt. Not of the mission. Of the decision that had placed a child above them. One of the senior operators glanced up again, jaw clenched beneath his helmet. His voice came low over the comms, controlled but strained. They didn't say her name. No one did. She existed as an object now, a solution that shouldn't exist, a living contradiction between ethics and survival. Somewhere far away, an authority had weighed risk and necessity and signed off on her presence. Somewhere safe, someone had decided this was acceptable. That decision pressed down on the men like extra armor, heavy, uncomfortable, impossible to remove. Another round snapped past, chipping concrete near a wounded CL's head. Isla saw it instantly. She tracked the shooter through partial movement, a shoulder, a sliver of weapon. Her breathing slowed, heartbeat sensing with muscle memory. She fired. The threat vanished. One of the platoon exhaled sharply. Jesus, he muttered, not in awe, but in something closer to grief. No one thanked her. No one acknowledged the save. They didn't mean to be cruel. Cruelty would have been easier. This was something colder, distance, detachment, a refusal to engage with what she represented. To speak to her would mean accepting the truth. That a 12-year-old was doing what grown men were trained for. That survival had come at a cost none of them wanted to calculate. So they stayed silent. Isla felt it. She always did. Silence had many textures. This one was sharp, edged with judgment. It brushed against her skin like cold metal. She didn't flinch. Her job wasn't to be understood. Her job was to finish. The ambush wasn't over. Isla saw the shift before the SEALs did, a subtle redistribution of movement, a pattern tightening like a noose. The enemy was hurting them now, forcing the platoon toward a narrower corridor, where escape would be harder. A trap inside a trap. She scanned rapidly, mind working faster than thought. Elevation points, choke zones, blind angles. Then she saw it. A heavy weapon being dragged into position 2 rooftops over. Crude, powerful. Designed to turn the alley into a grave. If it fired, no amount of skill below would matter. Isla's jaw tightened slightly. This was the shot that mattered. She adjusted position, ignoring the pain blooming in her elbows and knees. The concrete scraped skin raw, but she welcomed it. Physical sensation anchored her, kept memory at bay. The weapon came into view, ugly, improvised, lethal. Her finger rested on the trigger. She waited. The gunner paused, adjusting the mount. A second man leaned in, laughing about something she couldn't hear. Isla didn't rush. Rushing was how mistakes happened. Below, the SEALs shifted again. Tension rising as they felt the pressure without seeing its source. One of them glanced upward, eyes searching instinctively. For her. For the impossible solution. Isla exhaled. The shot struck clean. The weapon fell silent before it ever spoke. The second man froze, staring at what remained of his partner, shock locking his body in place. Isla didn't hesitate. 2 targets neutralized. The corridor opened. Lives were spared. Below. Realization rippled through the platoon like a slow wave. They understood now, truly understood, that they were no longer reacting. They were being protected. The platoon's leader lifted his hand signaling movement. His posture had changed, still commanding, but tempered now with something else. Respect. Not spoken. Earned. Isla saw it in the way they advanced with renewed confidence, how their spacing tightened, how fear loosened its grip. The enemy, by contrast, began to fracture. Fear made them sloppy. Isla marked targets methodically, not as enemies but as variables. She did not hate them. Hate clouded judgment. She felt tired, bone-deep tired, but she did not stop. 15 terrorists. That number would matter later. For now, it was simply the count required to end the threat. As she lined up another shot, something stirred beneath Isla's calm. Not doubt. Awareness. She knew how this would be remembered. Not as a failure of systems or nations, but as a story. A story about a child with a rifle. People would argue about her existence. About whether she should have been there at all. They would miss the point. She wasn't there because it was right. She was there because it was necessary. And necessity rarely asked permission. She fired again. Another life ended. Another breath below continued. The alley no longer felt like a trap. It felt like a countdown. The enemy had realized what hunted them, and panic crept into their movements. Shots came too fast now, angles poorly chosen, confidence replaced by fear. They were no longer executing a plan, they were reacting to her. Isla tracked them calmly. One by one. Each target presented a choice, and each choice carried weight. She did not fire out of anger or urgency. She fired when the moment aligned, when delay would cost lives, when restraint would endanger others. A man bolted from cover, sprinting for an exit with a radio clutched tight to his chest. Isla followed his movement smoothly, calculating speed and distance. She waited until he cleared the civilians huddled behind him. Then she fired. He fell forward, skidding across the dust. The radio shattered. The enemy's coordination collapsed. Below, the SEAL platoon advanced with controlled aggression, clearing ground that moments ago had been deadly. Every movement now felt guided, as if unseen hands were parting the chaos ahead of them. They did not cheer. They moved with grim understanding. This wasn't dominance, it was preservation. The number came to her without ceremony. 15. Isla didn't count them as people or bodies. She counted them as decisions made, moments crossed from possibility into permanence. 15 times she had chosen action over restraint. 15 times she had accepted the cost. Her rifle grew warm beneath her hands. Her shoulders ached. Sweat traced lines down her spine. Still, she scanned. Still, she waited. When no more threats emerged, when silence settled not as tension but as absence, Isla finally eased her finger from the trigger. The ambush was over. The SEAL stood in the open now, weapons lowered but ready. Eyes sweeping an environment that no longer wanted them dead. One of them removed his helmet, dragging a hand through sweat, dark hair. Another leaned heavily against a wall, eyes closed, breathing deep. They were alive. Every one of them. Slowly, almost hesitantly, several of them looked up. Isla was already breaking down her position. She moved with efficient calm, disassembling the rifle the way others might pack a lunch, habitual, unceremonious. No victory pose. No acknowledgement of what she had done. Just completion. One of the younger operators swallowed hard. That was her, he said quietly. No disbelief this time. Only fact. Command finally broke through the restored comms, voices filtered and distant, asking for damage reports, casualty counts, confirmations. The platoon leader answered professionally. Then he paused. There was a space, a breath held longer than protocol required. All hostiles neutralized, he said at last. Platoon secure. No mention of how. No justification. He didn't need to explain. Those listening on the other end would understand soon enough. Reports would be filed. Numbers would be analyzed. Questions would be asked in rooms far from blood and dust. But in this moment, authority no longer lived with command. It lived with the truth standing quietly on a rooftop. Isla slung the rifle across her back and rose to her feet. For a second, vertigo brushed her senses, the aftereffect of sustained focus releasing its hold. She steadied herself, palm resting against warm concrete. Below, the SEALs had formed an unspoken line. No order had been given. Still, they stood shoulder to shoulder, weapons angled down, bodies squared waiting. Isla descended the stairwell slowly, boots soft against worn steps. Each level brought her closer to them, closer to judgment or something like it. When she emerged, the alley felt different. Not safer. Acknowledging. The platoon leader stepped forward, helmet tucked beneath his arm. His face bore the marks of fatigue and something deeper. Respect. He didn't salute. He didn't speak. He simply stepped aside. The corridor opened. One of the wounded men straightened despite the pain, meeting her gaze. His voice was rough, stripped of everything unnecessary. We laughed, he said. And you saved us anyway. Isla nodded once, nothing more. Another SEAL spoke, quieter, as if afraid to break the moment. Some people fight loud so they'll be remembered, he said. You fought quiet so we could live. The words settled. No one added to them. They didn't need polishing. Extraction was on its way. Isla felt the mission recede from her body, adrenaline draining, leaving behind exhaustion that pressed heavy against her bones. She leaned against the wall briefly, eyes closing for just a second. In that second, faces surfaced. The marketplace. The long road that had brought her here. She opened her eyes again. This wasn't the end, it never was. But for now, it was enough. The helicopter arrived without ceremony. Dust spiraled upward as the rotors cut through the heat, heavy air, blurring the edges of the ruined street. Loose paper lifted and scattered. Sunlight fractured through the haze, turning the alley into a corridor of light and shadow. The SEAL platoon moved instinctively, forming a perimeter. Their motions were efficient, practiced, but something had changed. They were no longer tense. They were no longer hunted. Isla stood slightly apart, her small frame nearly swallowed by the oversized jacket she wore. The rifle remained slung across her back, secured, inert now. Without it, she looked younger, too young for the place she stood. As the wounded were loaded first, something remarkable happened. No one told them to do it. One by one, the SEALs straightened. Helmets came off. Weapons were lowered fully, muzzles pointing toward the ground. Bodies aligned, not in formation, but in recognition. They stood silent, still. A corridor of hardened men scarred by years of war opened as Isla approached the helicopter. She walked through it slowly, boots crunching softly over gravel and debris. No applause followed her, no cheers. Respect didn't need volume. For a moment, just a moment, she hesitated at the threshold, the wind tugging at her braid, eyes lifting to the sky beyond the spinning blades. Then she climbed aboard. As the helicopter lifted, the city shrinking beneath them, Isla leaned back against the cool metal wall and closed her eyes. Now that it was over, the exhaustion arrived fully. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from release. The discipline that had held her steady finally loosened its grip, allowing fatigue to settle where tension had lived. She counted her breaths, in out, 15 lives taken, an entire platoon saved. The math never balanced cleanly. It never would. Across from her, a medic glanced up, hesitated, then offered a canteen. Isla accepted it with a quiet nod, sipping carefully. The water tasted like metal and dust. Home would be another temporary place, another base, another briefing room filled with adults who would argue about her existence without ever meeting her eyes. She didn't think about that yet. For now, the sky held her. On the ground, the SEALs watched the helicopter until it became a distant speck, then nothing at all. No one spoke. Eventually, one of them broke the silence, not with celebration, but reflection. "She shouldn't have been there," he said quietly. No one argued. Another answered after a long pause. "Maybe not," he said. "But we wouldn't be here if she wasn't." The truth settled between them, heavy and unmovable. They had entered the mission believing strength looked a certain way. That courage followed familiar patterns. That protection always flowed in one direction. They left knowing better. War didn't care about age. Death didn't check credentials. And heroism rarely asked permission. 25. Iconic, shareable reflections. In the days that followed, reports were written, numbers logged, threats analyzed. Somewhere, far from the dust and blood, people debated ethics and protocols. But among the platoon, only a few lines mattered. One operator would later say, "She never asked us to believe in her. She just made sure we lived long enough to learn." Another would add, voice low, "Some heroes are loud so history remembers them. The real ones stay quiet so others can go home." And the platoon leader, when asked how they survived, offered only this: "We were protected by someone who didn't need recognition." That's the rarest kind of strength. Isla Rahman never told her story. She didn't need to. Her silence was not weakness. It was discipline, restraint, and respect for the weight she carried. She understood something many adults never would. That survival is not glory. That saving lives doesn't erase loss. That doing what is necessary doesn't always feel right, but it still matters. She would grow older someday. Or maybe she wouldn't. War was unpredictable that way. But on that day, on that rooftop, she had been exactly what the moment demanded. Nothing more. Nothing less. There are heroes we celebrate loudly. And then there are heroes we almost miss, because they don't look the way we expect, don't speak the way we're comfortable with, don't ask for approval. They simply act. If this story moved you, take a moment to reflect on the quiet strength around you, the people carrying unseen weight so others can stand a little easier. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from today. Share your thoughts on what true courage really looks like, and subscribe for more stories that honor the silent heroes who walk among us. Because sometimes, the smallest figure on the battlefield carries the heaviest honor of all.